working with Conan kind of spoiled me for all of the other programs that I was going to be on.
Adam Winrich.
Because with Conan, he wanted to see exactly how good he could get with the whip and play around with it a little bit, so that gave him more room to do comedy.
What am I doing wrong right here? Okay, As I told you, I'm an amazing athlete, so it's not my fault.
So when you see him doing comedy with the whip and sucking at it, that's only because he already put in all this time of actually trying to learn it. So then his comedy mind could start working out, all right, what are all the different ways I can play this so I can be more interesting with it.
And this is the cattleman's crack.
Cattleman's crack.
I've seen the plumber's crack.
When it comes to being bad at whip cracking, Conan is the best.
It's gonna look so freaking cool!
Welcome back, friends. Today we're sitting in Studio P, aka my dining room, with a 34-time Guinness World Record holder from Fall Creek, Wisconsin. Our guest today has traveled the world as a professional whip cracker. He's been featured on Conan, Stanley's Superhumans, America's Got Talent, and many, many more. Welcome to the show, Adam Winrich.
Good to be here.
Dude, thanks for coming. You just got back from Australia. You're just about to head to Texas. How long are you in town for?
This stint, I'm only in town, about 5 days.
How long were you in Australia for?
I was in Australia all up 13 days and a little bit of travel time on either end of that.
It was made in Western Australia using 40 skins of kangaroo leather.
What was your favorite experience in Australia this time?
My favorite experience in Australia this time? It was a real whirlwind trip. I had to add up the stats. So it was 13 days, 12 different cities. And me and my friend, it was kind of a buddy road trip, a bit of a whip pilgrimage, if you will.
Cool.
So we met 5 Australian whip cracking champions. And we met 9 different whip makers. I only had to book 2 hotels. The rest of the time we stayed in people's houses. We even stayed in one guy's horse camp next to a national forest and the foothills of the Snowy Mountains. So it was kind of too many moments to say, I only had just one favorite moment.
What is the most obscure place that you've had to sleep, and what is the fanciest place that you've gotten to sleep on your travels?
Obscure? Well, I would say when I went to Australia, again, when I planned the trip, I knew that there were at least 3 nights of the 13 days when I had to book hotels. So I booked those before I left. Everything else, I figured we'll just figure it out along the way. And if we can't find some place to stay, we'll just find some hotel. So the very first night that I got there, I didn't have a hotel, but we were going to see 2 different people. And one guy is an extremely talented whip maker. And then we get to his house. We're there that evening. Like, hey, man, we don't have any place else to be. We just crash at your place. He's like, yeah, sure. Him and his girlfriend were fine about that. So that first night in Australia, I slept on a yoga mat in his whip making workshop right next to the enclosure for his 2 snakes. So that was my very first night in Australia.
Sleeping on just a yoga mat, you are a champ.
I also had a shoe. Well, I was prepared to rough it. Like, I didn't know what the trip would bring.
Sure.
So I was like, to be able to say I slept on a yoga mat in his whip making workshop next to his couple snakes, I was like, that's got to give me some cred.
Yeah, I think so. What's the fanciest? Because I know you've flown, and we'll get into that later on, but I know you've been flown to China and Italy and all over the place for like TV appearances. Have you ever stayed in like a really, really fancy hotel?
Really fancy place. I'm trying to remember. So right before I went to Australia, I had a little video go viral of me like within a cheese head cracking whips, playing the harmonica on a rollerboard.
So good. 4 million views.
Yeah, I got a ton of views, and it reminded me, I didn't get any gigs from it, but I did get contacted by someone who hired me like years ago in Vegas for a gig at the Bellagio. So I'm pretty sure, if I remember right, that gig got me a room at the Bellagio.
Wow.
In Vegas.
Yeah, I mean, social media, that's part of the fun with it, is like how you can have videos hit between 5 and 10,000 for like a dozen, and then have one hit 4 million.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's kind of out of nowhere. And that was good. You're wearing a Reggie White jersey. I just watched it when I was like scrolling back through your socials. Okay. Normally I start the show the same way, which obviously we went a little different direction. But in your own words, who are you and what are you passionate about? Rolled your eyes a little bit.
Oh, who am I? I would say I'm a Wild West performer who's made a career in Renaissance festivals, and I have varied interests, but the one that I'm most known for is whip cracking.
What are all the different things that you do? I know you're throwing knives. I know fire came into play at some point. What are all the different parts of your performance? You can see some of your performances just like on YouTube.
There's
like some 20-minute videos that I watch. What are all the things? I've seen unicycles. I've seen juggling. There's a lot.
So the main things I work on, the two top ones are harmonica playing and whip cracking. And then in my show, I've also worked on lasso spinning, and I can do knife throwing. And then I've also have worked on the unicycle, but unicycle is super hard, especially considering I tried learning it later in life, so it didn't soak into my body the same way as whip cracking, which I started as a little kid. So the unicycle is a little bit harder for me, so someone can't just say, Adam, ride the unicycle. I'm like, can't I just crack a whip and play the harmonica? That'd be a lot easier for me.
I've never ridden a unicycle. I grew up skateboarding, spent my whole life, so I feel like I have decent balance, and I'm decent at juggling. I can't do like a whole lot of tricks, but I can do like the claw and like throw around my back, that type of thing. But I don't think I could do it on a unicycle. So I know you've told this story before, but really not that many times, so I'm still going to ask it. When and why did you get your first whip?
So I got into whip cracking because of Indiana Jones. So I saw the third Indiana Jones movie in the theaters in 1989, and I wanted to get a whip. And the Indiana Jones movies did a lot to reinvigorate what essentially was a dying art, which was whip making in the United States. And so I wanted a whip, and my very first whip was made out of rope that my dad put together for me. And from that, I always wanted a better whip. So then the only way to do that, because it was before the internet, was to learn how to make my own whip.
Which then you were doing that for quite a while. So maybe you'll be proud of me, maybe you won't. I have never seen Indiana Jones until last night. I finally watched it, put it up on my projector. I was like, I'm going to interview this dude. And I know that Indiana Jones was his biggest inspiration early on. I feel like I need to finally get around at age 35 and watch one of them. I didn't watch the 1989 one. I watched the Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yeah, the first one. For the diehard Indiana Jones fans, some of them are like, oh, the first one's the best one, man. And then they stop there. Everything else is a letdown after that.
So how would you rank them? There's like 5 of them. In what order would you put? Would you say The Last Crusade's the best one that was ever made?
I don't know, man. It's sort of like, the Star Wars films are in some ways similar to the Indiana Jones movies, and in that the first 3 OG movies are the ones people care about the most.
Yeah.
And in both instances, it's the second movie that's the darkest, but also somehow the best directed.
The Temple of Doom.
Yeah, it's like you're comparing. Not a Space Alien was the second Empire Strikes Back, and Temple of Doom. So I kind of like Temple of Doom the best because I feel like it's the darkest one, and some people like Raiders of the Lost Ark the best. I think I like Temple of Doom the best.
How long was it after you watched that one in theaters? Did you watch the 2 that came before it? Was it like the next day you went to the video store and rented them?
Well, I have no idea. That was so long ago. Like I was only 8.
But it didn't like invigorate you where you were like, I have to see all of these right away?
I think it would have been at a moment where I wouldn't have even been aware that there were other movies.
Oh, okay.
I think because I was that young. And now, young people are super connected.
Yeah.
But again, this is before the internet. So I wouldn't have known to go look up. Like my cousin after that wasn't saying, if you like that one, there's 2 other movies you should watch.
Sure. Okay. Fair enough. So you started making whips, and this was long before you started performing and everything. When was the first time you sold a whip? And I guess, like, how did you sell it? Because it was kind of pre-internet. Was it somebody else in town that saw you playing around with them and making one? Or was it online you sold a whip to somebody? How did that work?
Well, again, online, no internet.
Yeah.
At this point. So, no, the first whip I sold, I have a little notebook my parents made me keep about whips I sold, and I kind of had to backdate it, like fill it in once they finally told me start the book. I'm like, all right, I'm trying to remember what I sold.
Sure.
The first one I sold was in the winter of 1992, I believe, at a Western store out in Steamboat Springs, Colorado. So I started making whips, and I put together a few, and every winter my parents would go for a family ski trip out in the Rocky Mountains. And there are a lot of stores in this touristy town, Steamboat. And I had the whip with me. And I'm not entirely sure how it dawned on me that I should take the whip and try to sell it to the store. It's called FM Light and Sons. But I had this whip I made and took it there. And then they were so impressed. This little kid made a whip. They bought it right away. And we did go back a couple years to Steamboat Springs after that. And the next year I made even more whips. And luckily I sold all of those. But I was still a cute little kid. And then the third year, I thought, I'm going to sell even more. So I have another big bag of whips, and we'd go out to Steamboat Springs, and we'd go around to the stores. Turns out a lot of them didn't sell the whips that they bought the last year, and also I'd gotten a little bit older, but I hadn't got any cuter. So it was a lot harder to sell whips that last trip.
Yeah, that makes sense. So you mentioned to me off camera that you said your father is a performer?
No, my father-in-law. My father-in-law
is a
has
performer.
been a performer for like over 40 years at Renaissance festivals.
Okay, so that side of the family then later on, when that became part of your family, was, I'm sure, supportive. But there's a video of you that was very viral from Nick Meyer, our mutual friend from Volume 1, that he shot of you. It's only like 4 minutes or something. It's on YouTube, and it's got a few million views.
So it's that kind of thing, the pursuing of the records, that got me flown around the world.
And in it, I think it basically talks about how you were in college for like mathematics and physics, and you're like, I'm not gonna use this degree. Instead, I'm gonna go like play around with whips and try to make a living doing that. How did your family feel about it when you told them you're not going to use a degree in physics?
Oh, I don't think they were so bummed out that I wasn't using my degree. I think really, and this relates to my low point that we'll get into earlier, even though I didn't think of it a low point, because every career should hopefully start low and then just grow from there, was honestly, I didn't really understand with my degree what it meant to get a job with my degree, like where you start, how you go about it. So I was kind of all thumbs with that way. I mean, I love the University of Wisconsin-Eau Claire, and really enjoyed my time there and had some great professors, but they didn't really prepare me for how do I actually get into the working world with this degree that I got. And I had really gotten back into whip making towards the end of my college experience. I was selling whips on eBay, and then got a website during the winter of my last year as a student. And then, so I was making some money. And then I thought, rather than try to go through the process of getting a job that I didn't know how to get, didn't even know the first thing to do to get a job with my degree, let me just go ahead and try to make money doing this thing that I did know how to do, which was make whips.
How much money were you making per month at the beginning, though, like even doing that? Because I imagine it takes a long time to make a whip, plus the materials. Profit margins can't be that high.
It's not good. It's not good. So yeah, I can talk some real numbers with that. So pretty much those couple of years still living at home with my parents, making whips in my parents' basement. Once a month, my dad asked me, "You think you can make a living doing that?" And I was just doing what I wanted to do. I didn't care. I didn't realize that my parents kind of wanted the best for me and wanted to kick me out. Not so much they didn't love me, but they knew I just needed to get out to grow as a person.
Yeah.
I didn't understand that at the time. And I was like, I'm making money doing this right now. Granted, I'm still living at home, even though my dad probably had already built the house I'm living in at the same age that I was then.
Sure.
So he had done a lot more when I was younger. No, financially, I was not doing well. I think I made like $12,000 a year.
Oh, God.
Or something. No, it's not good, but
Yeah.
cost of living was very low.
Yeah.
And my parents were supporting me. So that's kind of a low point, but I didn't think of it as a low point. It is a low point, but I didn't think of it that way because I was just doing what I wanted to do.
Yeah, I guess, I mean, you said low points are always at the beginning. I agree, but I don't agree, because your career, just like life, it's like full of highs and lows, and theoretically, it's like the stock market where it's going to go up, but there are a lot of times where things drop down, where you thought you had all this momentum and things just aren't working for you. As an example, I can think of, like, I got married when I was 21, and when I got divorced when I was 30, that would be like the lowest point in my life, even though professionally maybe it wasn't. It was just like things seemed to fall apart that I had been building for such a long period of time. But when you haven't built anything yet, it doesn't feel like you've lost anything yet, or you've lost momentum either, because you're kind of early on. Let's talk the performance side of it, and that obviously like evolved over time. But when was the first time that you performed using whips? Was it in high school, or was it like way later and in college, that like the first time that you did that?
Well, to say about college, when I was in college, my main performance outlet was playing the harmonica. So I played a lot around Eau Claire,
Just by yourself, or like with?
No, I'd go to jams. I'd sit in with bands.
Okay.
I was kind of in a couple bands. One band I'd play with was it Davy J and the Jonestones.
Okay.
He was I don't know if he still is a professor at UWEC. So my main performance outlet for a long time was the harmonica. But as far as first performances, I would say that they were as a little kid going to graduation parties.
Okay.
Is my memory of it. And you can be a certain age of a kid with a whip, like, say, under 12, before puberty hits you with an ugly stick. And you can just, hey, look at, he's got a whip out here. See if you can hit this baseball. So I was just getting attention then with a whip, and I understand why it worked back then, because there is something really charming about seeing some little kid getting into something that seems, I don't know, so old-fashioned or out of place or so niche.
Yeah.
It's really interesting to see.
Were you wearing outfits like this when you were 12?
Oh, no. When I was a little kid, they weren't formal performances. I was trying to think. Probably as a teenager, I do remember going with my dad to this reenactment of Buffalo Bill's Wild West show in Greenbush, Wisconsin. It was next to a carriage museum. And at that time, my dad and I were involved in fur trade reenactments. I'd go into rendezvous. So I had a rendezvous-type costume. And I'm pretty sure I remember talking to the owners there, and they let me and my dad go out and do like a little part in their Wild West show. That's my memory, but it's so long ago. Yeah. There's some memories that people ask me about a lot that are really well worn.
Yeah.
And I can recall that like that, and other stuff where I'm like, I think that's what happened, but I haven't thought about that in a while.
Sure. When was the first time you got like hired for something though? That you got like paid to do a performance? Was it like a little birthday party type thing, or was it like way later on when you were applying to work?
No, I was trying to think. Well, really, with the whips, as far as knowing that you could get paid to do it was never something I really thought of. I understood that you could make money making whips, and performance-wise, I knew a lot of musicians, so I understood locally, like, okay, you can get paid to play music. I didn't understand at that point what it meant to be paid as a variety artist. So I'd say I really didn't understand it until the Renaissance Fair started in Chippewa Falls in 2006. And there, I wouldn't have even thought to get hired, except I'd been doing community theater for fun in Eau Claire. And my whip cracking got incorporated in a couple plays. So the people that are in the community theater knew that I was doing whips. And then once the fair started, some of them were involved in that Renaissance Fair. And they said, oh, you should do a whip cracking show at the Renaissance Fair. And I had been to the Renaissance Fair up in Shakopee in Minnesota, which is the oldest permanent site Renaissance festival in the country. So
really,
even though it's our, quote, local Renaissance Fair, in the Renaissance Fair industry, it does have a very important place.
Wow. I mean, the first time I ever went to a Renaissance Fair was this summer at that one in Shakopee. So I'm glad that was my first experience. So when you got hired by that, did you get paid right away to be like, okay, I'm going to perform every Saturday throughout however long that Renaissance Fair was in Chippewa?
I'm trying to remember. No, it was Saturdays and Sundays, and I remember it was only 5 weekends. Again, these are some memories that I haven't gone over in a while. I remember being 5 weekends, Saturday, Sunday, and I would have gotten paid, not very much. But then I also would have gotten tips.
Yeah.
And I think, for me, more the bummer about the experience was that I didn't get to do like enough shows. I think they'd only booked me initially. They said, okay, you get one show at the end of the day. When they initially hired me, I kind of thought they'd just give me a space where I could just keep going all day. Like as crowds come in, I'd do a little thing. And really, I knew somehow, I already knew that to get good at performing, you just have to do so many iterations of your act and just just put stuff in front of people over and over and over again to see what works, see what doesn't. So that way the weak stuff will get cut, and then the strong stuff you keep doing.
So at that time, were you still just, I guess, what was your income at the time? 2006, you would have been, how old were you in 2006?
I was 25.
So you weren't still living at home at that point,
No,
right?
I was.
Oh, you were. Your parents really took care of you then for a bit there. So
No, they did. My parents, you could say, maybe are almost too supportive. And luckily, Renaissance fairs did get me out of the house.
Yeah, but I mean, when you started the Renaissance fairs, it was still then you were just making money making whips. That was all you were doing at the time? Or were you making a little bit of money from harmonica performances and stuff too?
Oh, a very minuscule amount of money playing harmonica. No, my main source of income still then would have been making whips.
So how fast did the transition go from getting that first job with the Chippewa Falls Renaissance Fair? Was it like you had that experience and then come, next spring, you were booked up through the entire year at a whole bunch of them? Or how long did it take to kind of get in the circuit? Like, kind of how did that work?
It built over a couple years. So I only did the Chippewa Falls Renaissance Fair in 2006. And then 2007, I went to a couple different Renaissance fairs. I auditioned for the one down in Kenosha, the Bristol Renaissance Fair, which I still perform at. So that was 2007. And where else did I go? I went to a small Renaissance fair in Michigan called the Silverleaf Renaissance Fair. I'm not sure if that's still going on.
How did you even apply for those? Because again, this was, well, I guess the internet would have been around at that point in time. So could you just go to their website and there was like a application link or something, or how did it work?
Yeah, I think, well, first with the Renaissance Fair in Chippewa Falls, the other performers saw me and saw my skill set that I developed, like cracking two whips, which really didn't exist in the Renaissance Fair circuit at that time.
Right.
Whips existed, but not the specific skill set that I had developed. So they could tell that I was unique, and they were like, hey, if you want to get into this, here's some other fairs you should do. So it kind of snowballed that way. Pretty much from 2006 I started. By 2010 I was on the road full time, and I was on the road at least half the year by 2008. So it just took another couple years to flesh it out to be gone for a whole year. There has to be some Western stuff too, because I guess you got into it not so much like on the Renaissance, like Kings, Queens era type thing, like with whips. It was more in like the Western stuff. Are there Western festivals or whatever for performances in that kind of way, or not really? Well, there are a few. Maybe they're kind of dying out. I would say before Renaissance Fair started, to sell some whips, I did get involved in like the Old West Society of Minnesota. Just kind of the outfit I'm wearing today would come from that era of like wanting to reenact the Old West.
Yeah.
And it felt like there was just a real specific generation that was interested in Old West reenacting. And there wasn't like a lot of young people coming up underneath of that to help it grow. So It kind of had one specific generation, and once they got to a point where they didn't feel like traveling anymore, that kind of really faded away. So when I started doing Renaissance fairs, I could tell it was very multi-generational. And compared to the blues music I've been playing and the Old West reenacting I've been doing, which had a real narrow window of a generation that was into it, it was really refreshing to start Renaissance festivals and see it was something for all ages.
So when you started getting hired by those, did you just buy like an Astro van and like carried equipment with you and traveled along with kind of like I guess any fair employee or whatever, but like how did it work? You said you were on the road. Do they provide some of that stuff? Do you hop in a bus with a whole bunch of other performers? Was it just like by yourself? What did it look like?
No, it would have been by myself, just packing my stuff in the car. For instance, my big year on the road when I was working half the year was just to pile everything in my car. I was living in a tent. So 2008, I went to a Western Skills Convention in Florida. And then the next weekend we started work in Arizona, so drove my car all the way from Florida to Arizona in like 3 days, and then put up my tent and start working that weekend. So live in a tent, be out there for 2 months, and then I went and lived in a hotel in Irwindale, California. I worked the Southern California Pleasure Fair, which is the oldest one in the country, and I did that one. That one was 7 weeks, and then I came back home, and then in 2008, I did all of the Bristol Renaissance Fair down in Kenosha. And when I did that one, I just had a tent down there, but then I would come home to my parents' place during the week.
They don't provide you with any accommodation. So at the time, when you're just living in a tent and driving around, because it was early enough in your career, were you just having the time of your life? Or were you like, man, I was expecting a little bit better, not better treatment, but you know what I mean? I was expecting to have like hotels or something to sleep in.
Oh, no, I think the thing is that my family did a lot of camping. I was in the Boy Scouts, like I am an Eagle Scout, so I'd done my fair share of time in a tent, so I kind of already knew what it means to be like, or I'd kind of be self-sufficient, or like, okay, you need a sleeping bag, you need a cot, and if they provide a little electricity, that's great. So I think I already kind of knew how to rough it. I wasn't by no means expecting hotels. They do, some Renaissance fairs are able to provide, I would call them shacks, like a unfurnished kind of plywood room.
Okay.
And the only time that living in those shacks ever hurt me was when, say, at the Bristol Renaissance Fair, I had no AC in my room. So sometimes a hot, humid summer, it's just hard to get enough sleep so your body can completely recover living in a shack like that. So after a certain number of years of doing that, the main shift I had to make was start living in an RV full time, which I live in with my wife. So that way I had a better bed and we had air conditioning, so I could get better sleep to keep doing it. Otherwise, there was a point when I was living in those shacks where like, I don't know if I can keep doing this, man.
Yeah.
Just from just how my body felt, not like I'm demoralized from how I'm living, because again, like starting out with making a living in my parents' house, I was like, well, that's just how it is. Maybe I'm too accepting of what my conditions are and just like look for whatever I'm happy about and adjust my attitude accordingly. No, I didn't think it was bad until I felt exhausted. And then once I got better living conditions, I just had more energy and got better rest to be able to keep doing my career.
So now that you're in your 40s, in 20 years, you're going to have a really, really big fancy tour bus that's $500,000. Oh. So that way it's... So what is the... looking back on all the times that you've tent camped and eventually you evolved into having an RV, what's your favorite place that you ever tent camped, and why? What was the trigger for you to finally be like, I should have like, I don't know, I should sleep somewhere better than a tent?
Oh, when I should sleep somewhere better? Oh, so that was a distinct moment. So when I got a girlfriend and we were real serious in 2013. So the best Renaissance festival I was doing at the time was the Texas Renaissance Festival. So I had started that in 2010, and I kind of just made do with wherever I could stay because I'm just one dude. So the first year I was in the back of a karate studio. Second year, I lived in a Motel 6, and then the third year, I just stayed with a friend of mine in some little extra corner of one of his rooms, and that's fine for one dude.
Yeah.
And then 2013, our relationship gets serious. We need to be together at the Renaissance Fair, and I'm trying to find some living situation that'll work for both of us. So it's a mutual friend. He's got some land, and he's got his old RV, and he says, you guys can live at my place, and it'll be fine. And turns out it was not fine. And we get into this old cramped RV, and half the stuff works, and my wife... now my wife, but then girlfriend, like cried for a week. And I could tell that, all right, this is really tough. So it worked out that I'm now trying to have a serious relationship, be together on the road. And my two best Renaissance festivals have the absolute worst living conditions. I need to change this. And before that, everyone was telling me, do not buy an RV. They're a pain in the butt. But it was kind of a necessity at that point. And I'm glad I made that leap because it was very important for my level of comfort, just being able to take care of my body, and very important for my relationship. So for some people, living in an RV sounds terrible. But one of the things about Renaissance fairs, as far as a lifestyle, is that each Renaissance fair is about 2 months. So I'm not driving the RV from place to place, week to week. I get to a place, I'm there for 2 months. There's a lot of people that come back year after year. So you build a real strong sense of community. As my wife likes to call it, it's kind of a gated community. All your friends are there. You can just walk over to your neighbor's house, knock on the door, and say hi. Yeah. We can all be real close to each other, for better or worse. And then that's how my wife grew up. She grew up doing Renaissance festivals. So I think about that. If I had tried to settle down and be a committed relationship before Renaissance Fair started, I don't know what some girl from Fall Creek or Claire, how she would have adjusted to that. But that's all my wife knows, and that's all she wants. So someday it'll just be hard to get my wife to want to be in a house for longer than 2 months. Yeah. Even my wife's clock, internal clock, as far as when it's time to move, is so hardwired that we're at one Renaissance fair that was 8 weekends, and then it extended to 9 weekends. But after that 8th weekend, she was like, "We got to go. We're supposed to pack up. We're supposed to be going," because she was just so used to like every 8 weeks, like boom, pack up everything, and you're to the next Renaissance fair. So, had you been seeing your wife at various Renaissance festivals for a while before you guys got together? Was she like the cute neighbor one in the other RV? I would say. She wasn't in the neighbor RV. I met her in Arizona in 2008, and how I would describe her is she was the one that was too pretty to be at Renaissance festivals. When I first saw her, I was like, "You're too pretty to be here." Like being in an Eau Claire, not to want to like knock Eau Claire at all. Some attractive people here, but sometimes you see somebody like, "You're too pretty to be in this Quick Trip. What are you doing here?" Quick Trip is full of the most beautiful people that have ever existed. Okay, so things evolved from there, where you were doing, and you're still doing Renaissance festivals. That's like your main thing that you do all the time. When was the first time that you got flown to do a TV appearance? Because at some point that evolved, and you've been on America's Got Talent and Steve Harvey and all these international TV shows, like breaking world records and doing all that stuff. When was the first time you did something that wasn't part of like the festival like circuit? I'm pretty sure the first one was this Discovery Channel show called Time Warp. That was in 2008, and I got flown to Boston. And we did some filming on the harbor, but we also did some filming in MIT. And then it aired on the Discovery Channel. And that was a big turning point, I would say, in how my family perceived my career. And in part, I realized sometimes it helps in your career to have certain sound bites that your family can repeat to other members of the family to make it seem like things are going well. Like they don't have to really understand what's going on. Yeah. But if you can just tell other fans, "Hey, Adam was on the Discovery Channel. He got flown out there." It sounds good. I mean, it was really fun to do. Yeah. Is it obviously financially better just to be doing Renaissance fairs? Yeah, but it sounds better to the rest of the family to have done this thing. So that was a big turning point in my career when the family could say, like, look what his career happened, as opposed to saying, like, no, yeah, Adam, he's still in the basement, still trying to make whips. Some days he just doesn't talk to us.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's the same way with the interviews, right? It's like the first time I interviewed someone who was like famous, not that that's the best interview I've ever done or it got the most views or anything, but because I could be like, I interviewed that person, people are like, oh, I've seen that TV show. I interviewed Lamorne Morris from that show, New Girl. And he's on a bunch of shows. But anyway, so like once I could name drop that person when I'm reaching out to organizations that I want to work with or people I want to interview, they're like, oh, the perception is like, wow, this thing's really, really cool then because this person did it or you did that thing. Where I'm like, well, that was not the one that performed the best. That was not my best work by any means.
Yeah.
You know, same way I did a music festival and I interviewed Genuine for like 5 minutes, you know, when he got off stage. Is not like an interview that I'm like stoked about. He was a nice dude. But like being able to say that when I'm hitting up other music venues, they're like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or I had did a virtual one with Mike Love from the Beach Boys. It's just a little virtual thing. He was at the airport talking to me over his phone. Yeah. But because I can be like, I interviewed Mike Love from the Beach Boys, that helps with getting a hold of brands and all that other type of stuff. It's all that perception. So when did I get, so that was your first TV appearance. That wasn't like a Guinness World Record thing, was it, at the time? Or why'd they even ask you to do that?
Time warp? Oh, yeah. So the point of the show in 2008, super high-speed cameras, like the Phantom camera, had just come out.
Okay.
And so there wasn't a lot of, hardly any, like super high-speed footage out there. There is a lot now because those cameras are now in like their umpteenth generation, and a lot of people know how to operate them. But then they were very new, and you kind of needed a special operator, and they were very expensive. So the Discovery Channel they created a show where there was two guys. One guy was a camera operator, and then the other guy was like the physics expert. And the point of the show was to find, I guess, just interesting, normal people that did stuff that maybe could happen real fast. So that way you'd get their reactions when they see whatever they're doing, like in super slow-mo, and be able to understand what's happening.
Sure.
So you can understand the whip crack that breaks the sound barrier goes over 1,000 miles per hour. So a lot of stuff happens really fast.
Yeah. No, I mean, that makes sense. So when did the world record thing start taking place? Because you have 34, not that you still hold all 34, but you have set 34 Guinness World Records. But when you do that, that's not just like a set up your cell phone and, hey, I just did this thing, right? Like you have to have witnesses and you have to like file paperwork and do the whole thing. So why and how did you break your first world record? And then how did that start to evolve? Because I know that was part of the trigger for you flying internationally to be on TV shows and that type of thing. But how did that kind of work?
Right. So the start of it, there's a whip cracker. He lives in the Minneapolis area now by the name of Robert Dante. So Robert originated a record called Most Bull Whip Cracks in a Minute. And there was one year in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, there was a Spirit of the West festival, a little one-weekend Western event. He was performing there, and he was going to try to get his Guinness record back. Him and another guy named Chris Camp were going back and forth with this record, each one beating the other one. And so I was one of his official witnesses for that record. So I got to watch him do it and give him some advice. And then he was able to break the record. And at some point after that one, the next year, I think he felt like he wouldn't be able to beat Chris Camp, but he still wanted to be relevant. So instead of him going to the event and trying to get the record back, he sort of set up a competition where other whip crackers could come in and see, can you get the record? And I didn't really care at that point, but my friends cared on my behalf. And like, you should do this, Adam. You should totally. Like, oh, okay. So I made a whip to the measurements that I needed, and I trained a little bit, and then I went to his competition and did it, and it went way better than I thought it would. Like, I blew the old record out of the water. I think the old record was 220-some bull whip cracks in a minute, and I did like 261 bull whip cracks in a minute with this whip I made. So I was, so that experience of realizing, oh, I can do this thing, inspired me a lot. Now, the way his competition worked, I did get a prize, but that actually wasn't made into an official record. So I had to go back later and do it myself with that process and the process, how it kind of works is you have to submit an application online to Guinness about which record you want to do. Then after a while, they'll get back to you and say, okay, here are the rules that you have to follow. And then some of the things you have to do, yes, you have to film yourself doing the record, and you also have to film yourself showing that you're following all of the rules and meeting all the requirements for the record. So that footage has to be submitted. You also need 2 witnesses to sort of fill out forms and sign them saying you followed all the rules, and then a little bit of other paperwork, and you submit all that to Guinness, and they'll review it and then get back to you and say whether you got the record or not. And getting that first, even not getting that first record, but doing that first experience and being so successful made me think, maybe what are the other whip records I could do? So at that time, there were only 3 whip cracking categories for Guinness World Records. There was a longest whip crack and most bull whip cracks in a minute, and a third one, most Australian stock whip cracks in a minute. So there are only 3 records. So I set myself the little goal of maybe I can break all 3 of these records and hold all of them at once.
Did you? I know that you had the longest one, but I didn't know about the Australian one.
The Australian one is a little bit niche, a little bit hard to explain to Americans. Like, what do you mean there's more than one whip? There's the American bull whip, what Indiana Jones had, and that's all there is. So the Australian stock whip's a little bit different. It's kind of got a longer handle. If you've seen The Man from Snowy River, that movie, that's what he's using.
Okay.
So it's just it's a different type of whip.
So then how did all these TV appearances, I mean, you just talked about the Boston one, but like I remember hearing a story of you saying that you got flown to Italy to like break a world record or something on TV. Maybe I'm not saying that quite right, but how did those start coming up? Like, was it one of those 3 records? Did you get contacted by somebody else because there was new records that were set up by a TV show or something, or how did that work?
So the first Guinness Records TV show I did was in Beijing, China in 2008. And I think, getting chosen to be on there was because of the other records I had done. But then once I was on it, some of the Guinness representatives saw me and said, you're doing well on this show. If you want to do another one, there's one in Italy and we can recommend you to them. So then I got flown to Italy in 2009.
So did they already have, did they send you an email saying, okay, we came up with this new record of, whatever, 2-handed number of cracks or whatever the thing was. Did they just say, hey, there's a new record that's not one of these 3. We think maybe you could be a part of this, and then you have 3 months to train for it? Or what was the situation?
How did that one go? I think in 2009, the record was most soda cans cut in half in 3 minutes. And so I would say that was kind of the start of, once I kind of got into the Guinness World Record thing, then the categories for what records are there for whip cracking really started to grow. Okay. So like one record I did on my own in 2007, there was a Western Skills Convention in Oklahoma where there was a Guinness rep that came who wanted to do like a 2-page spread in the Guinness book about this convention. So he was going around to different people, seeing who already held what records. And then because he's a Guinness rep and he can just make up the name, write up the rules on the spot and film you and count it, be like, boom, it's a record. It's a real nice fast way to get a record. He can just go around and see like, okay, there's these records that exist. And is there any other records you would like to do? And like, sure. And you just describe it to him. He says, like, sounds good to me. And you just do it. So at that convention, I originated a record for most whip cracks in a minute with 2 whips. The other records I'd gotten before that was just like 1 whip. Okay. But I do a lot of 2-handed whip cracking, which is a very Australian thing. And so I thought there should be a record for 2-handed whip cracking. So that's one way that a record can be created. And then for the TV shows want something that's really visual, that looks good on TV. So a trick that I had started doing at Renaissance festivals was cutting a soda can in half with a whip. And so they recommended that as like a category. We might have had some back and forth spitballing about what would look good on TV. And normally Guinness records are a 1-minute interval. That's the most classic interval for a Guinness record, how many in a minute. Yeah. And the Italian TV show wanted it to be 3 minutes for some reason. They thought more people would pay attention for longer to the show if it was a 3-minute record, which is kind of long. Yeah. But that works into my favor only because I did the record on the TV show, most soda cans cut in half with a whip in 3 minutes. And then eventually Guinness decided we're just going to retire this category. There are some Guinness categories that are retired either because Guinness doesn't like the time limit or they think it's dangerous. For instance, fastest time to drink a pint of beer. Sure. Or something that got to a certain speed and Guinness was like, it's going to be dangerous if we let people keep trying to beat this. So with the 3-minute can cutting record, like we just don't like that time limit. So they retired the record, which means no one can beat it. So no matter what I do, no matter what anyone else does, I will always be the Guinness World Record holder for most soda cans cut in half with a whip in 3 minutes. And it was only like 21 cans. Sure. So now, if I trained a little bit, I could probably cut 20 cans in half in 1 minute. Sure. And And someone could beat that record, but they can't officially beat it because Guinness retired the record.
When was the first time that you cut a can? Did you make that whip? Because I think the whip you use is like chainmail or something, right? Did you buy that from somebody? Did you see somebody else do that? Was like that a trick people typically did before you?
Not really. So the most classic equivalent in American whip cracking as far as a trick and with something being broken or cut would be using a whip to break a glass beer bottle.
Okay.
So that's a classic trick. But it's also very messy.
Yeah.
Not great to have lots of glass around. So the can thing, as a kid, I was always just chasing cans around the yard. I just throw it in the yard and crack the whip at it. And every now and then I'd put a little hole in it. And then at one point, I know I made a kangaroo bull whip that just had the right weight to it, where I decided to set a can on a chair, and it's an empty can, and I just went, whoosh, cut it, and boom, cut it right in half. And I was really impressed at that moment, but I didn't think, oh, this is something I want to do regularly. And then, fast forward now to the Renaissance Fair in 2006 and 7 up at Chippewa Falls. My show was right next to a pub, so I think I had some time where I was just chatting with some people, and they're drinking beers out of cans. And like, oh, what can you do to this can? And then so I whipped it, and I poked a hole in it, and then I remembered, oh, I did, as a kid, I cut a can in half. That this would probably be a good trick to do because the cans are right there and something familiar to people. So then I went home, did a little bit of R&D with the whips that I had because you need kind of a heavy whip to do it, and kind of made a longer tail on the end of a whip called a popper, snapper, or cracker, and tied some knots in it and practiced, and then until I was able to get a can in half regularly. And then that became part of my show. And with the chainmail whip, that only came into the show because there's a lot of chainmail around Renaissance festivals, and some people had made chainmail whips, so people would tell me, bro, you need a chainmail whip. But the thing is, with chainmail, normally the links are just kind of butted next to each other. They're not welded shut. So a chainmail whip's very heavy, and those links can open, and half of your chainmail whip can go flying, which is bad if you're surrounded by a group of people trying to do a show. But then when I got out to Arizona, there was a very talented chainmail artist who made chainmail whips, but the last part of the whip was welded shut. Every individual link had to be welded shut. And that made it as a functional whip. So I started using it in my show a little bit, and it took a while to realize, oh, this is good for cutting a soda can in half because it's one very precise crack. It's not like a bunch of cracks moving around. So then the chainmail whip became the whip that I used to cut a can in half. Does it have to be chainmail to cut a can in half? No. But is it cooler to say it is a chainmail whip to cut a can in half? Yeah. And then that kind of evolved to a routine that I did for a while where I would pop a balloon between a guy's legs, and I would start out looking like I was going to use a normal whip to pop the balloon, but then I'd get out the chainmail whip, everybody freaks out, and then I warm up by cutting the soda can in half, and everyone freaks out a little bit more. And the good thing with the chainmail whip is I didn't have to crack it super hard for it to pop the balloon. The balloon's like more than 12 inches wide. Yeah. So I've just cut a can in half, so there the margin for error is like 1 inch. Like 1 inch off either way, and you're not going to cut the can. So the balloon, it being like 12 inches or more wide, is a pretty safe margin to know that like I'm not going to hit the guy.
What's the worst injury you've caused to yourself, and what's the worst injury you've accidentally caused to somebody else? Because accidents have to happen once in a great while.
Sure. So see, my worst injuries, I would say by burning myself with a fire whip. I've burned myself in the hand, I've burned the back of my neck, and I burned my belly button with a fire whip. So those would be...
How'd you burn your belly button? It just was coming back and hit you?
No, what I was doing is the guy that was making my fire whips, a guy named Riz, was telling me about different performances he would do. And he said, with the fire whip, if you do it early enough in the burn, the body of the whip itself is cool enough that you can actually wrap it right around your bare skin, around your body, and pull it off and not burn yourself. And that has to be early in the burn. And I think I was at a show, I was doing that trick, and I did it, but I was a little bit tired from the night before, so I didn't pull it off fast enough. So the very end of the whip, which is some hot Kevlar, come around my back, then around the belly button. It was hot enough, you had to burn myself right there.
Did you keep performing, or was it bad?
Yeah.
What about somebody else? There must have been some mistake at some point, even just watching yours. And I understand that you give yourself a much wider margin for error than you probably need with your skill. But still, like, you're throwing knives at people and have you never injured somebody on accident?
Oh, no, I totally have. That's one of those things where, like, if somebody asks me that in a show, I'll just be like, if I ever hurt anybody, totally, man. We'd send someone to the hospital like every other show. What you talking about? because you'd rather have just a quick line that people think is funny than have to get into the nitty gritty truth of it. One of the injuries that did happen, as relates to mistakes that I've made. So I found that performing at the Bristol Renaissance Fair during the summers, like the shows would be going really well, and it would just like get my confidence and level of comfort up so high that then you'd start making mistakes or you're too comfortable and you'd take risks that you shouldn't be taking. So in this particular instance, I worked there all summer and everything went great. And then we get to the Spirit of the West Festival in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, which is a much different environment, much less controlled because you're just out basically in this pasture, in this field, out in the Great Plains. It could be windy and sunny and hot. So the trick I'm trying to do is I have a 22-foot whip, and I have a friend of mine, and I take, I'm trying to remember, I think it was like a bottle cap, and I put it on top of his hat. So normally a hat, like a cowboy hat, stiff enough that even if I graze the hat a little bit with the whip as I'm trying to use a 22-foot whip to whip the bottle cap off the hat, even if I hit the hat a little bit, it'll just bounce right off the hat. It won't grab in. But my friend's hat was a little bit smaller, and it was also a really kind of floppy hat because his whole Western costume he could just throw into a suitcase. So we're trying to do this trick, and I was so confident for my skills from the summer, like I can do it. But I keep whipping at it, and I keep missing. But with this kind of trick, usually you just keep trying to aim at the same spot, and eventually there's enough variation in where you're actually whipping that you'll eventually take the cap off his head. But it turned out that one of the whip cracks came in too low, and it caught his hat. And because his hat was so floppy, it didn't just bounce off. Then it continued to wrap around his head, and then the cracker came and hit him right below the eye. And then, and I could see by his reaction, it was like somebody just let all the energy out of him because he just crumpled. And luckily, he's fine. His name's Garrett Popek. He was fine. All his vision came back. It did knock some floaties into his eye, but I certainly was freaking out and felt super bad. And mainly learned that with whip tricks, I'd be like, take all the risks you want with inanimate objects. It's never worth it to put someone in actual danger. It's always better to play it safe.
Yeah, I would say so. I would be pretty bummed if I volunteered and then got my eye taken out. Did you ever have to deal with noise complaints from neighbors when you were growing up, cracking the sound barrier over and over and over again?
No, because where I grew up, I guess just outside of Eau Claire, it's a farm country around there.
And everyone anyway, so.
Kind of. That's right. So, I mean, everyone, like, the neighbors, my aunt lives on one side over the hill, and my cousin is on the other side of the hill. He's in the farm where my mom grew up and where my grandpa farmed. So they know who I am. They know what I'm doing. And they'd be like, oh, Adam's out doing his thing again. So they're not right next to us. And I would say it's the thing with whip cracking. You kind of have to have a rural outdoor existence to be able to get good with it. I like to say no good whip cracker is ever going to come out of New York City.
Yeah, for sure. So you set the record for the loudest whip crack, right? Tell me, or did you not? I think you had a... Yeah. Okay, yeah.
The loudest whip crack. I'm holding right here my Guinness certificate.
I don't... when I see the number on your website and it's like however many decibels, I have no perspective on how loud that is. How loud was it? How did you break that? How did you build the whip for that? Can you hear that crack from 5 miles away? Like, what is that?
Well, first, what I will say... one, the record is about 148 decibels, maybe a little bit more than that.
Whoa.
But the other thing to know is that there actually are about 4 different ways to measure decibels. And that's the thing. So I learned all about this when I did the record, and then I forgot most of it. But the deal is that like the decibels you hear, oh, this rock concert was this loud. That's like loud noise over a couple hours. And that's very different than the way the whip crack was measured. The whip crack was measured with a sound level meter using the peak of the sound. So instead of having a waveform or your sound level where it's super high for a super long period of time, it's only super high for a fraction of a second.
Yeah.
And that's it. So that's why it's 148 decibels, because it's the very peak, the very tippy top of the waveform or the sound level being picked up by the meter, not sound levels over time. Because hearing damage is that you would experience is kind of comes from that, like how long are you exposed to that loud sound? So yeah, if I was exposed to 148 decibels, but that's over a minute, you're gonna have some permanent hearing damage. But over like a split second, you might have some hearing damage, but you'll recover.
Sure. How did you build the whip for that, or
that particular whip? No. So the other thing I would say about the loudest whip crack is there's a couple things that kind of work out where it's not like the gnarliest whip you could ever build. So first, the way Guinness set up the rules is you had to be with sound levels. How far away you are from the sound level meter makes a huge difference as far as what reading you get.
Okay.
So if I was able to crack a whip like super close to the sound level meter versus 20 feet away, that'd make a huge difference. So how Guinness set the rules is you first set up your sound level meter, measure 8 foot away from that, and then put down a line. Now put the tip of your whip at that 8 foot mark, and then go all the way out to the length of that whip, put another toe mark or a line, and then the video you submit has to show your body never crossing that line, getting too close to the sound level meter.
Yeah.
So I used a whip about 13 feet. So I had to be like 8 foot plus keep my whole body then 13 foot away from that toe line to crack this whip. So then basically it's a game for me to take the whip and then throw it out and get it as close to the sound level meter as I can without going over that toe line.
Is it like the sound of a gunshot kind of loud, or how loud is it?
Yeah, so there's a video I made with the sound level meter and sound level meters that are very well made or very expensive. So I rented one. And then I did make a YouTube video where I compared the sound levels of different whips. Oh. And then at the end, I shoot just a 22 pistol at the same distance at the sound level meter. So the loudest whip I have is about equivalent to a 22.
Jesus Christ.
Or at least that's at least the ones that I use there. And then the other thing I will say about like loudness of whip cracks, there are many different ways to crack a whip. And you can do something called the flick, where you're kind of throwing it out like a baseball, and the whip will crack about as far as it can away from your body. There's another crack called the overhead crack, where you swing it over your head and then you pull it back really hard. Now that whip crack happens a lot closer to your head. So for most people, they would say, oh, the overhead crack, well, that's as loud as it ever gets. But that's just because the whip crack is happening so much closer to your head. It's just perceived as being louder because that's just how sound works.
Sure.
So I have whips that I would say are louder, but I can only get a really loud crack by doing an overhead crack. Like my heaviest whip crack, 46 pounds. That whip, I wouldn't be able to swing it and get a loud crack using the flick real close to the sound level meter. But if I were able to change the way the things are measured, you'd be like, oh, that 46-pound whip, that's the loudest one. Sure. But it's just the fine points of the way the record works that I wouldn't be able to use that whip to set the record for loudest whip crack.
Are you still trying to break more records or not?
This last year was probably the first year in a while that I hadn't done a record, but I was just so busy for the first part of the year, from beginning of February to basically end of September. I worked every weekend but 3. I only had 3 weekends off from shows, and then most of those weekends were spent like getting ready for the next gig. Sure. So I kind of didn't have enough time. The next record I would like to do is the most whip cracks in a minute while balanced on a unicycle. But the unicycle takes so much time, and it can kind of take away time from like the training I should be doing to be able to do my shows. But I'm going to have some time off in December and January, so I'm going to try to get myself back in unicycle mode so I can get that record.
Yeah, dude. Well, okay, so let's talk a little bit about social media as well as TV appearances. So before social media, people's like viral moments were being on things like America's Got Talent or like any of these TV shows. All of a sudden they would get their 15 minutes of fame. Everyone would see it. And it's like, now I can tell people with my portfolio, I was on this thing. Yep. Versus nowadays with social media, like the best way to build yourself is all of a sudden having a 4 million view video, and then everyone sees it. And then that helps you get booked for things.
And real quick, I'd just like to throw in there, my record for most views of a video, I have a video on TikTok, I looked at it this morning, has 88 million views.
Yeah, it's pinned, right?
Yeah, that's my pinned one because, yeah, you want to be proud of that.
Yeah.
Like even we talked about Jacques the Whipper, who is the most viral whip cracker out there today. Like even he hasn't surpassed that, having a single video get 88 million views.
Do you guys get pretty competitive? I know you guys are obviously friends because you made a bunch of videos together. Do you get competitive about like views on things or records or skills with things, any of that?
No, we don't really get competitive. I think because we're so different. Like, we actually did go back and forth on one record, Most Bullwhip Cracks in a Minute. But I was helping him along. I actually built the whip that he used for that record.
Oh, okay.
When he first let me know that he wanted to get it, I met up with him and I saw the whip he was trying to use, and it was way too heavy, and I actually felt bad for him. So I told him, like, all right, here's the deal. I have this new design of whip that I think will be a lot better for breaking this record. I will make each one of us one of them, and then we're going to go back and forth a few times. And then if you end up with the record and I can't beat it, that's fine.
Sure. What's your favorite story of hanging out with him that wasn't on camera? Because you guys have a bunch of clips and stuff together, but I'm sure you spent a lot of time together.
Oh, well, I guess unfortunately it probably was on camera. I'd say my favorite times of hanging out with him are being on stage with him.
I'm not giving you that part. Jack, that's my favorite part.
Because so we perform together, and one of the nice things about being on stage with Jack is that we are very different people, but we complement each other like very well. Like, I'm a painfully analytical person, and he is not. So that is one big difference. And with the whip cracking, I can be a very technical person, a very studied person. And again, he is not. He brings a lot of personality to it. But then when we're on stage, like, to make stuff happen, it's like the easiest thing in the world because the way our personalities mesh. And also his fan base that shows up to our shows are so rabid anyway. You don't have to do too much for them to get a huge reaction.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense. So let's talk the social media. I know, like we said, you and Nick Meyer did a video that has a bunch of, millions of views on YouTube. When social media came in, did you try to hop on it right away? What kind of impact did it have on your career? Because you already, when social media came around, it was like 2007, I think Facebook came out or something. So it took a while before that became like a major player in people's careers. So you would have already been in the circuit. How did that kind of affect your career?
Well, my YouTube channel, I started in 2007, and YouTube was only a couple years old at that point. First, for starters, I think I always did enjoy filming myself, and I know there was a couple like film projects in high school we had to make that I was all about. So it's kind of once I realized, like, oh, there's this thing on the internet where you can film yourself and make videos and post them. I was very excited to get into it. So I was probably one of the first major adopters in the whip cracking world of YouTube, and posted a ton of videos, either of stuff of me practicing or whip cracking tutorials, and just like posted a ton of stuff on there. So it was definitely YouTube that did get me certain gigs, like my Conan O'Brien appearance in 2012.
Adam Winrich.
That came from YouTube? Somebody just messaged you from it, or what?
Yeah. So that came from YouTube. When I got to the Arizona Renaissance Festival in 2008, I was able to book that gig because I had shot a promo video at the Bristol Renaissance Fair in 2007. I put that on YouTube. I was able to send that to them, and based on that video, then they hired me for that. See what else came from YouTube. I was in 2009. I was part of an installation in Italy. And I got that gig through YouTube. They found a video of me and were like, we want to replicate the vibe of this video in the art installation. Wow.
So these TV appearances, what's your favorite memory of them? Because again, you've had all these international ones, but you were on Conan. You did one with Steve Harvey where I think you cut cans on Steve Harvey, right? I watched that one. And you did the America's Got Talent one, which I thought I read somewhere that you got through, but then you couldn't go to the next round or something because of booking.
Who are you?
My name is Adam Winrich. I'm 40 years old from Fall Creek, Wisconsin.
Real quick. No. Well, first with America's Got Talent, so I did do it 3 times.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I did it in 2012. I had an amazing experience. I got a standing ovation. But at that time, and they still have it. They still have this huge contract you're supposed to sign.
Yeah.
And I wasn't really aware of how it works, and I had everybody tell me, like, don't sign the contract, man. It's too bad. They'll control your life. So I didn't sign it, and because I didn't sign it, that means they couldn't use my footage, and I couldn't go on. So in 2012, I could have gone on. They wanted me to go on. They were kind of mad about it, but I had so many friends telling me that this is awful, don't sign this contract. So I didn't even go to the lawyers at America's Got Talent with any questions. I just flat out told them, like, nope, not signing it. And they were like, what's wrong, man? So that's an instance in my career, and this happens a lot in life, where you just need to be able to talk it out with people, and they probably could have told me, because I found out later from another guy on another show I was on the Gong Show in 2018.
Please welcome Adam Winrich.
I asked him about it, and he said those really thick contracts that they had were for music artists, because America's Got Talent kind of came from not The Voice, whatever, American Idol and stuff.
Yeah.
They knew that you, as a TV program who makes a music artist get really big, there's a good chunk of money you can get, and they didn't want to leave that on the table. But for someone like me who does live performances, there is none of that music money involved. So I could have signed that contract, and I would have been totally fine. I would have done another round or two, gotten my 10 minutes of fame then, and it would have been fine signing that contract. However, I also believe if I had signed the contract at that time, I would still be exactly in this place I am right now talking to you. It wouldn't have changed my life significantly at that moment.
Why do you think it wouldn't have changed it? Because that would have, at the time, that would have brought a ton of visibility to everything that you were doing.
Well, what I found for my career, and for any career, I'd say, in the whip world, is you do need bread and butter. You need some kind of gig, some way to make money that's very regular, that you're kind of geared up to do, and that gives you a steady income.
Yeah.
So for the impressive stuff that I've done, like, ooh, he was on Conan. You can't make a living off of like late night TV performances.
Sure.
And the most you can do is like get a lot of notoriety in the moment, and then maybe you get a little bit of money from it, but you can't make a living doing that. So really the way I make a living, my bread and butter, is doing Renaissance fairs, where you're booking like 2 months at a time of shows every weekend, and they're easy for me to do now because I've been in it so long. I have a reputation that I've built up. I have a fan base that I've built up, and it's nice, steady work. It's a place where I can go to and be in a community of people I know, get my trailer there, and then I just walk to work on the weekends. There's no commute or anything. And I need that bread and butter work. And there's other people as performers, like variety artists, that maybe like get a gig here and a gig there. And it's really hard. It's much harder work to try to like just even do all of the client interaction just for one show. Whereas with Renaissance fairs, I've done them so long. We have like, I can have a 1 hour meeting and then sign the contract. And now I know that I am set for the next 3 or 4 years for that 2 months of the year. It makes it very easy, as opposed to like the same amount of work or even more for, say, one show in Fort Worth and then a lot of rehearsal leading up to it. And the payday isn't that good. I'm like, this is a lot more work for less of a payday than what the Renaissance fairs are.
Sure.
So I don't feel like, for me as a variety artist, people want to say, there should be something better, bro, that you can do with your life, like doing these Renaissance fairs. I don't know. But Renaissance fairs are really a growing industry. They're very popular. They've just grown since I even started doing them. They've been growing steadily since the 1970s. So it's a very good interest or good industry for someone like me to be in, and I would never knock it.
Yeah. Well, I think also as you get older, your perspective on things change. And like when I was younger, I used to think like, I think a lot of people feel this way. They think of the most successful people as being like the people who made the most amount of money or who were the most famous. And success, I feel like, looks a lot different as you get older, because you think of like, well, what lifestyle makes me the happiest? Is not necessarily getting the most amount of views, not that I don't want to get them. It's not necessarily making the most amount of money possible, not that I don't want to make money. But it's just like, how do I build a lifestyle that I enjoy? And having something like stable income, especially when you're self-employed, is like almost impossible to get. So when you find something that is stable, it's amazing. Like the sponsorships that I work with, I work sometimes with some smaller brands that I know, like, budget-wise, they're not going to be able to do anything long-term, and I can't count on that.
Yeah.
But the bigger brands, like when I got my first deal with Quick Trip, was like, oh, as long as I do what I'm supposed to do, I can most likely count on this for an extended period of time. And that sets my brain, my mind at ease quite a bit with like what's possible. What's your favorite experience from being on TV? Do you have any fun stories of like before the show with Steve Harvey or Conan or any of these people? Like, are there any funny memories that you have from any of those experiences? Or do you not really see the host at all until like you go on stage with them in that moment?
Oh, no, I would say that working with Conan kind of spoiled me for all of the other programs that I was going to be on, because with Conan, that was when he was on TBS. So he ran the show. He did it exactly the way he wanted to do it. So I got to interact with him a lot before filming. Like, he really wanted an in-depth whip cracking lesson. And he was very serious about it. And I was surprised a little bit, but he was like, no, tell me if I'm really getting it. I really want to know. And I understood later, his process, at least how I understood it, is that he wanted to see exactly how good he could get with the whip and play around with it a little bit. So that gave him more room to do comedy. So when you see him doing comedy with the whip and sucking at it, that's only because he already put in all this time of actually trying to learn it. So then his comedy mind could start working at, all right, what are all the different ways I can play this so I can be more interesting with it?
Now, it's important.
What am I doing wrong right here?
Okay,
As I told you, I'm an amazing athlete, so it's not my fault.
And my little anecdote I like to say is, when it comes to being bad at whip cracking, Conan is the best.
Yeah, I mean that's like an example of a true professional, right? Of actually looking at like, okay, I have this opportunity, but how do I maximize the opportunity that's in front of me instead of just like coasting? Okay, I have some quicker, smaller questions for you if you're down, rapid fire, so to speak.
Well, I would like to say I love Quick Trip. Every time I come back home, Quick Trip, I'm always excited to be able to stop there. And I actually have, for my birthday this year, my wife bought me a couple Quick Trip hats and a couple T-shirts. And she said, just whatever you do, don't wear the hat and the T-shirt at the same time.
If you do, you could tag Quick Trip. I'll send it to him. Who knows? Maybe you could be the next Quick Trip influencer. We had our ambassador day, and there was like 40 some of us, and they like sponsor professional athletes across the board and all kinds of different people doing all kinds of crazy stuff. So it could be fun. You could be part of the crew. I
think they did comment on my just to back up a little bit, my little viral video that I had before I went to Australia, me with the cheesehead.
Yeah.
I think Quick Trip's social media did comment on it, and I would have commented back, but I was like, they're not going to pay attention. Like, for instance, one of my early videos that got a lot of views on YouTube was like 10 different ways to crack a whip. It's like me kind of in the snow-covered field right by our house, and I used the snow because the whip was a dark color, and I wanted to contrast so you could really see what was happening. And Skrillex of like dubstep fame commented on the video of like, that's my boy. And I was like, I would listen to his music. Like, I totally want to know Skrillex better. Like, can we meet or something? But so I commented back, but I felt like he saw the video once briefly, and then me trying to get a hold of him would be as equivalent to me being on a desert island shouting at an airplane that's up in the sky.
Social media, it really, really depends. I've found, like, I've talked to some pretty famous people that definitely manage all their own social media and see everything, regardless of if they respond. But they do read them all. Like when I mentioned Lamar Morris earlier, he told me that once a week he checks all of his. He doesn't actually respond to the vast majority, but like if there's a meaningful one, he does, and he does see them all. And he told me, generally speaking, if somebody has, and this is again not the case with everybody, but if somebody has like 1 million followers or less, most likely they see every message that comes their way. And that was like really? And then I started sending DMs to like favorite music artists of mine and stuff, and like I get a hold of people all the time. It's pretty rad, and it's mostly through that. But I got the connection with Quick Trip. Okay, anyways, so some quick questions. If you had to pick 4 whip crackers to make the Mount Rushmore of whip cracking, who are they going to be? Most influential whip crackers.
Most influential whip crackers today?
In history.
Oh, in history? Most influential whip crackers in history. Okay. We're going to say Indiana Jones, Catwoman, Zorro,
And lunch!
Jacques the Whipper.
I love that you went with those ones. I heard that who Michelle Pfeiffer, is that who played Catwoman?
Yeah, in the Batman Returns movie.
Yeah, and she actually did the whip cracking in that.
She did.
Dude.
And I know the stuntman who trained her. Actually, I was just in Australia. I brought a bullwhip back from Australia that I just mailed him the other day. And I will say, like, he will never let anybody forget that he was the one that trained Michelle Pfeiffer.
Dude, I wouldn't either if I had.
Yeah.
What's your favorite piece of memorabilia, or in general, piece that you've collected through your years? Because you have, I would assume, hundreds of whips at this point, but you've traveled the world. What's your favorite individual item that you're like, put that on the shelf, I want to show that off?
Oh, well, you want a short answer for this. First, I would say, as far as whips that I have, it's actually kind of bad just to put them on a shelf as far as storage, because not too many realize this. Not too many people realize this, but when it comes to leather, the moisture content in the leather is actually very vital. So there is actually a certain amount of water that's in it, and putting it on a shelf with the sort of air and dust circulating just sucks the moisture right out of it, and then it'll just break the next time you try to crack it. It doesn't happen right away, but over years.
So have to be in a thing like
kind of
cigars, where they have to like be the humidifier and everything has to be running with them. Like
yeah. If you would want it to be maintained for like a long period of time, but hanging on a wall, yeah, you would need it in a humidor, so it doesn't lose. My travels. So I do own a bull whip that from David Morgan, who made the whips for the Indiana Jones movies. I own several of them, but in particular, the very first one I bought in 2005. I ordered from him, and I talked to him on the phone about it, and then he sent it to me. So I have that one, and then he actually stopped making whips then in 2007. He had a hip injury, and then after that, he wasn't able to recover enough to ever make whips again. So it was nice for me, for someone that made the whips for the Indiana Jones movies, something that kind of started my career in the first place, to have a whip that he actually made, where I was actually able to talk to him about it on the phone is pretty important.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, that's how I felt when I interviewed the artist that inspired me to start painting. And I interviewed my favorite music artist in the world, too. Neither of those were like the biggest interviews I've ever done, but I was just like, you guys impacted my life on a whole nother level. You know what I mean? So you've made a lot of whips. You've bought a lot of whips. What's the most expensive whip you've ever bought? How much did it cost? And how much is the most you've ever spent making a whip?
Most expensive whips. So I have a couple whips that are, I would say, genuine art pieces that were made in Australia, and both of those were 10,000 Australian dollars, which, depending on the exchange rate, comes to
13,000.
No, $6,000-$7,000 American.
Okay.
It usually comes down. At one point, the Australian dollar was worth more than the American dollar.
Sure.
But right now, it's kind of back to about $650.
Sure.
Or something. And then
most you've spent creating a whip.
Most expensive creating a whip. I'm trying to think. I'd say, so the very best whips, the art whips I have, are made out of kangaroo leather. So I've made several whips out of kangaroo leather. And I would suppose the most expensive one I would have made a couple years ago, I made a 24-strand kangaroo leather bull whip for a whip making competition. And I needed at least 3 kangaroo skins to make it. So that would only come to roughly $300 worth of leather in one whip.
I guess that's really not that bad when it comes to like everything with that. How many professional whip crackers exist, if you had to guess? Like, are there hundreds? Are there like a dozen that you have all of their cell phone numbers? How many people even exist in that industry?
I am connected to most of them. If somebody tells me about such and such, and I haven't heard about them, then I make sure I do some research. So I'd like to be connected and know what's going on. No, it's not hundreds. I would say it'd be in the dozens. In part with whip cracking in particular, it's such a niche thing. So pretty much everybody that does whip cracking, you can find a lot of variety artists that maybe have their main thing as either like juggling, and then they do some whip cracking, or lasso spinning, and then they do some whip cracking. Because a whip crack is a real easy thing to add to your repertoire. It's actually not that hard to learn how to crack a whip. So it's super easy to add it into your bags. Be like, my main thing is I'm going to juggle 5 clubs, but I can crack a whip a couple times and make a couple jokes to get people to pay attention before I start juggling.
Sure. That's why Conan was able to do it, besides the fact he was a true professional, because it's not that hard.
Right. It just seems... I say... Whip cracking is like a lot of things, like also like the harmonica, is that learning the most basic rudiments of it is super easy.
Yeah.
But then learning everything else that there is to do will take you a lifetime.
Yeah. So what is the record you're most proud of, and which is the most obscure record you own?
Most proud record. I'm trying to think.
It could be one that you don't still hold. Could be one that you just got at the time. Because I know a lot of them, the longest whip has been taken by somebody else and whatever.
I guess in the moment here, I'd have to say the record I'm most proud of, at least right now, is last year I got flown to Milan, Italy for Guinness World Record show to do a record for most Jenga blocks whipped from a Jenga set in a minute. Now, I was the current holder of that record at 7 blocks. But when I did the 7 blocks, the atmosphere was... We're just during the week at a Renaissance fair, nobody around. I get my friends together and be like, hey, let's get the documentation together to do this. And I'm just going to keep going until I match my personal best of 7 blocks in a minute. And that's what we'll submit. So I had an hour in a very relaxed setting to do 7 blocks. And then I get contacted by this Guinness Records TV show to be like, we want you to beat this record, but now it's going to be in 3 tries in front of a live studio audience on a different continent. So obviously it's a much bigger ask. So I was trying to tell them, like, I'm not sure if I can break it. Maybe, but I do want a trip to Italy. So I had no real confidence that I could do the record. I kind of didn't care. I just wanted to go do the show. But they kept asking me for progress videos as I went along practicing. So I did find it's pretty easy to put together like a hot 20 seconds of knocking out Jenga blocks. Never mind that I was trying for 3 minutes. Here's 20 seconds of me doing like 4 blocks or 5 blocks. But then they would get more specific about what they wanted to see. And I kept practicing and finally put it together, everything I needed to do to be able to do 8 blocks like on command right before I went and did the show. And then that was good that I was able to do that in practice, because then finally once I was on the show, I did need all 3 tries to do it, but I was able to get all 8 blocks out without knocking the Jenga set over in front of the studio audience on the show. And the most interesting thing about it is that it took me 3 tries, but once I did the 8 blocks, the live audience did not applaud. All that happened is I'm going along, finally feeling good, in the zone, and then all of a sudden I feel the barometric pressure in the room change. It just went whoosh. And then I realized I may have done it. I should probably check. And then I looked on the ground and counted, and I counted 8 blocks. I was like, yep, I'm done. And no one applauded. It wasn't like a huge hurrah. Maybe they're just so surprised because I sucked so hard at the previous 2 attempts.
Yeah, and it didn't have quite the splash power as when you're cutting cans on TV and it's like spraying everywhere,
right?
In that kind of way. What's your most embarrassing moment ever recorded? Because you didn't like blow it on any of the TV shows. Like you pretty much did everything you were supposed to.
Well, on Conan, I was supposed to cut a can in half, and then that didn't work. I had to like then go beat the can in half with the handle of the whip, which Conan thought was funny.
Hold it. There's still time. Yeah!
Which is good. Sometimes it's better to be funny than good, especially as you get older and like your skills start to slip. Comedy is something you can hang on to.
Sure.
So naturally, that's something I've been developing my whole career about doing comedy, because you have to do comedy at Renaissance festivals. Embarrassing. I think the thing is, though, from a young age, it took a lot to embarrass me. I was kind of prepared to do almost anything in front of a crowd to get attention, and then I would evaluate later if it was good or bad.
Okay.
Kind of. In hindsight, though, I would say now that I play harmonica a lot more, I'm more cognizant of like how to play something correctly. But one of the things I did when I was in high school is I wanted to play harmonica. I wanted to play the Star Spangled Banner, or our national anthem, at sport events. But I didn't know how to read music at the time. So I was trying to play in a position called second position or cross harp. If you have a key of C harmonica, you're going to play it in the key of G. And in the song, our national anthem, there was one note I couldn't actually play in this position, but I didn't know I was missing it. So there was always one note off. And of course, all the kids that are in band know 100% which note I'm missing, but I wasn't aware of it. But here I am in front of a big crowd playing it and then missing that one note. And everyone's like, he's missing that one note. I know very well now how to play it. And I even worked on like learning to play John Popper's version of the Star Spangled Banner at sporting events. So that's the only thing in hindsight I was like, I did that thing like so incorrectly. That's would be kind of embarrassing. But at the time, I was just happy to do it. I just wanted to go do the thing in front of people.
I would think most people listening wouldn't know harmonica well enough to like point that out and immediately be like, whoa, he blew it.
Oh, no, you would know. It's one of those, it's a very recognizable melody, and I was very off on that one note. So no, anyone else would know, that's the totally wrong note. That doesn't sound right.
Okay, so you learned how to do that. What is the most recent thing you learned in your life or career? Not necessarily the biggest overarching thing, but what's the most recent thing that you learned? Like I recently learned that when I zoom with my cameras, when I'm setting them up, it makes the margin for error for the focus much smaller.
Thing.
Yeah, that's just one thing I learned recently.
Well, here's something I thought about bringing up, because we were going to talk about different social medias and what you get out of them.
Yeah.
So YouTube has been a good way to like get other gigs, even though they don't pay the bills. Like I think all my highest profile gigs have come from people that see me on YouTube. Facebook is a good way to connect with other people in the whip cracking, whip making world, and also a way to connect with some of my fans. Instagram has been a good place to sell whips that I make. Now TikTok, I really haven't gotten any financial benefit from being on TikTok, even though on TikTok I have a video with 88 million views. No gigs have come from TikTok. I've not sold any whips from TikTok.
Sure.
But no, I think the thing was it was hard to walk away from that because I was, as an entertainer, you want an outlet to get attention.
Yeah.
And I found that is one thing I will do is if I go like a week without doing shows, then I'm going to seek out some other way to get some kind of attention. Just because I am a middle child, a Midwesterner, and my zodiac sign is that of a Cancer, which apparently is the trifecta of wanting to be a people pleaser.
Yeah, and just you need attention all the time.
Yeah.
So I'm going to give you a couple of gifts quick before we head out of here, and then I'll have one more question for you. First, I know you drank coffee before you got here, so I didn't pour you any, but any of these 3 coffee mugs that are on the table, you can pick whichever one that you like the most. I don't expect you to bring it in your RV, but if you want to bring it in your RV around the country, you're welcome to.
I like the one with the skull.
It's my favorite one, too. And then the headphones in front of you in the little gold box right here.
Oh, I got some headphones?
Yeah, those are from Skull Candy. Those are fancy and gold. Little earbuds. Those are normally $59.95, but those are yours to keep for free.
Oh, it totally made the trip worth it. I didn't even know I was going to get headphones.
Aha! Yes, now it was definitely worth hanging out with me. Yeah. Okay, so when you do something that you're passionate about for a living, you get to have really unique experiences, such as going on Conan and a lot of different things. You've told a lot of stories. But you get to have really unique experiences that are rarely financially driven, but they are what make it all the hard work worth it. Can you think of a story like that for you to share? Take your time if you need one. So
what makes all the hard work worth it?
Yeah, like what's a story of something that came up because of you choosing to do this that in the moment you're like, wow, this is what my life is like?
I'm trying to think. This sort of answers your question, but maybe not quite. So a gig that I had, the very last gig that I had this year was a gig at Fort Worth. I was hired to do the whip cracking. On this gig, the lady who produced it also wanted a knife thrower. And I told her that, hey, if you want a knife thrower, like me and my rope spinning buddy, who you are hiring also for this gig, like the 2 of us can do a knife throwing in your gig. If you just hired us, we can do that. So she did, and I didn't know when I said that how much work it would be. I knew it'd be some work, but it was more work than I thought it was going to be, having to haul a knife throwing board around. I did spend 3 days at his dad's house in Bandera, Texas with him, like rehearsing the gig. But then even when we got on the gig, of like us running our lines in front of the show producer and us having to retool some stuff because like apparently if you're performing for really rich people, you can't mention money at all. It all has to be couched in euphemisms, which I learned on that gig. And it was a lot of hard work. It was a really hot day in Fort Worth. She wanted me as my outfit to dress as a cowboy, but also wear woolly chaps, which are basically the cowboy's version of a snowmobile suit. But it's 90 degrees or hotter in Fort Worth that weekend. So naturally that wasn't great. So it was really hard work. But on the gig was this guy named Richard Turner, who is the world's best card mechanic. He's not a sleight of hand card magician. He's totally blind, but you hand him a deck of cards and he is able to control the outcome of any hand of cards that you want.
And the best possible hand in wild card is 5 aces. We're playing high spade in the hole splits the pot. What's that?
It's an ace.
Ace of
spades. Yeah.
And you didn't even give me a full deck. So you could honestly say, that Turner doesn't play with a full deck.
That Turner does not play with a full deck. That's
and yet
amazing.
I dealt you the perfect hand in poker.
So you sit around playing Texas Hold'em. He can pick who's going to win. You're playing blackjack. He can deal 21 for himself every time. It's totally amazing. So he was on the gig, but then after the gig, we're all like it's hanging out in the hotel lobby at a table, and he's just doing card tricks and telling stories to us for like 3 hours. So we're just sitting, drinking wine, him doing card tricks, like amazing us, then telling us stories about like when the mob killed his ex-wife. And that experience of just being able to hang out with that guy who's like a totally unique individual in the world of performing and just get kind of a private show for 3 hours made wearing the cowboy snowmobile suit in 90-degree heat worth it.
Wow. Yeah, I get to have a lot of unique experiences being backstage with people and stuff. And like I had Wayne Hoffman's one of my favorite people in the world. His birthday was yesterday. Happy birthday, Wayne. He's an illusionist and he's like a mind reader. And he's gone on like the Today Show and every TV show doing this, right, with celebrities and stuff. And we became friends and I interviewed him and now we've hung out a bunch of times outside of the show. But one time when I was in Florida, because he lives there, I shot him a text and I was like, hey, we should catch up. And he's like, absolutely. So we went out to like a bar and we were having a drink. So funny. Dude walks in and there's a billboard behind him of him because he's like the featured person at whatever the big stadium is there for their whatever, like a resident performer. He walks in wearing all white linen and he has his hair like long. So he's like looking like Jesus and sits down and we're talking for 5 minutes. And I mentioned something about magic and he's like, yeah, I've done magic for you before, right? And I was like, no, I wasn't going to ask you to do magic for me. And he's like, I've never read your mind. I was like, no, you haven't read my mind, Wayne. He's like, we're going to fix this right now. And so he read my mind sitting there at the bar and I didn't pay him a dime, but I got to have this like really unique experience of like this famous mind reader reading my mind with his billboard behind him. And it was just like people would have paid a lot of money to have that experience. Right. And I got to have that just hanging out with my buddy Wayne. Right. So sick. Okay. Well, thank you so much for coming over. I really appreciate it. How can everybody go support you moving forward? You're across like all the social medias. Is it just Adam Winrich on everything or how can people follow you?
If you want to follow me, most of it is Winrich Adam. Like my Instagram is at Winrich Adam. I think that's because at some point maybe my AOL email or something had to be Winrich Adam because Adam Winrich didn't work.
Aging ourselves with AOL emails.
Yeah, I still have an AOL address. I would really like to say for anybody that wants to get their own whip, while I do make whips, it's just a hobby for me, but my wife makes an excellent whip. I taught her how to do it and I got her started, but now she's totally shot off and she got her own business and does her own thing. Her whips are cracked around the world. So if you'd like to check her out, it is DaKittyWhips.com. Her name is Dakota, so DaKitty, D-A, Kitty with a K, whips.com. She makes a great whip at an affordable price. So if anybody wants to get started, you want to check out DaKittyWhips.com.
And where are you going to be moving forward? You're going to Texas are you going to be performing in Texas? I guess over the next, say, like 6 months, where are you going to be?
Over the next 6 months, so we live in an RV most of the time, so we're just going to be in a warmer climate through January in our RV making whips, and then my performing career will start up again in February at the Arizona Renaissance Festival outside of Phoenix. Then I'll be at the Scarborough Renaissance Festival south of Dallas in April and May. Then for sure I'll be back at the Bristol Renaissance Fair just outside Kenosha, Wisconsin for 9 weekends in the middle of the summer, basically weekends between 4th of July and Labor Day.
And then you're going to just be staying in Wisconsin that whole time. Do you come up to Fall Creek during that time frame? Like during
sometimes I should be around Fall Creek all of June. I'm planning not to book any gigs for myself in June.
So if anyone wants to run into you, go to Fall Creek in the summer during a weekday and hopefully see you at a Quick Trip.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you could totally run into me in a Quick Trip, 100%.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of The Passion Pod. We hope you enjoyed it as much as we did. We'll see you soon.